So I'm really excited to have Miki Kashtan here. Miki is one of my mentors and someone whose work actually originally inspired the work I'm doing with Conversations Against Fascism. So welcome, Miki. So really glad to
Thank you.
meet you. Yeah, so first I just want to acknowledge you that, uh, I guess 4 years ago, I attended one of your workshops called Responding to the Call of Our Times. And and by the end of that workshop, I created the first event in what was to become Conversations Against Fascism, which was my own birthday party against fascism. Um, I just want to thank you for creating that space that eventually led to this space.
It doesn't get better because whenever I teach, what I really want is for people to take it and run with it. So it was super gratifying to get your email invitation and hear what you've done with what you received. So I'm all in.
Wonderful. And is there anything you'd like to share about like why responding to the call of our times?
It's interesting because I came up with this title just about a month or two before Donald Trump was elected to be president. And I remember after he was elected, like, wow, this just got a notch or two more intense. And even before then, I was already really sensing that what is unfolding, not just in the US. I have a very global perspective within which I see the US as a very impact generating country. And within what I was seeing, it's very, very intense what is happening in the world, climate change, rightward move.
Okay. So you were saying before you moved, you were saying um, that even before the election in 2016, you saw that things were getting intense.
Yes. And in one way, things started getting intense thousands of years ago with a turn towards patriarchy, which is probably not something we're going to be talking about. That's the
We are.
source. We are. Okay.
Next question is how do you define patriarchy? But feel free to say something about intensity before we get there.
That is when we turned away from life,
Mm.
which is which emerges from flow, functions in togetherness, and results in choice, to patriarchy, which emerges from scarcity, functions in separation, and results in powerlessness. So that is what turned up the volume on the misery of humans. And a lot of people think it's because of agriculture, and it isn't. Agriculture made possible accumulation and hoarding because agriculture produced dry goods.
Hmm.
Before that, there wasn't anything that you could store
Yep.
and accumulate. So agriculture was really helpful for patriarchy, not the actual cause of it. The cause of it is calamities, either natural disasters that outstrip a group's capacity to metabolize the resulting trauma, or invasion, which is most places patriarchy came to those places through invasions.
Yep.
Um, and then with that began the accumulation, the control of women, the class societies, states, taxes, money, debt, slavery. They all came then. So it was pretty bad already before now, before 2016. And there were specific moments of acceleration, one of which is the transition to capitalism, which intensified immensely the possibility of extracting resources from people and from non-human life.
Mm.
The move to extract was there. The desertification of what used to be the Fertile Crescent happened before capitalism. Capitalism just makes it possible to do more, in part through technology and in part through secularization, which removes reverence for life and makes it more okay to treat things as objects because it's matter, it doesn't have life. And then it got intensified another time in the 1980s with neoliberalism. And the relationship between capitalism and fascism is quite significant, both in terms of how fascism emerges from intensifications of capitalism, from the misery of the lower classes. And I'm not going to look for a quote right now. Walter Benjamin, who was one of the intellectuals of the critical theory schools, the Frankfurt School in Germany, who fled the Nazis but didn't manage to get all the way and ended up dying. And in the years before he died, he said fascism speaks to the, not his words, to the misery, and gives a way of expression to the masses without any intention of changing the material conditions that give rise to their misery.
Mm.
So you have an outlet to express your anger, and then it can be directed in all kinds of ways without actually any
Doing any remedy or any
No.
intention of a remedy.
No.
I could say a lot about that, and I know you want to move on. You also want to cover post-patriarchal world. So
Yes, so it's just that just to complete that cycle, as things in the US and in other places got to such an extreme level of wealth gap and resource access to resource gap within and between countries, the rightward move in so many places, most recently in Italy again.
Mm-hmm.
There is now an officially pro-Mussolini party that is ruling Italy, as far as I understood. But that was elected, I don't know yet.
I heard something similar, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a collective situation. It's not a US specific situation. And add to this climate crisis and environmental degradation that isn't specifically climate, war, inequality, all of these things. I want to get people to wake up to their own power on their own and with others to come together and create change.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the responding to the call of our times speaks to.
Amazing. And Conversations Against Fascism has a very similar mission, but focused on one of those crises.
Yes.
Okay. And you started to talk about patriarchy and how you see patriarchy. And I just want to, since the title of this is post-patriarchal way of life, I believe. You define patriarchy a little differently than other people, that it's not just about sexism. So you want to?
I think sexism is a manifestation of patriarchy. Patriarchy isn't actually about men. And in fact, my belief is that within patriarchy, men suffer. I'm not going to compare more than women, less than women. Men suffer within patriarchy in pretty serious ways, early on and throughout life. There's a degree of aloneness and that men live within. There is a threat of violence if you don't toe the line that is intense and extreme. And when probing into it, there's so much numbness, so much incapacity to actually form and sustain relationships, even when the longing is so deeply there. So I don't actually think that men benefit from patriarchy, nor do they cause it. I think patriarchy is now deeply baked into our fundamental views of human nature, which perpetuate control as an essential aspect of human life. So the key elements of patriarchy, I said already, I'm talking about it as the combination of scarcity, separation, and powerlessness. And some of the mechanisms are control, either or, right, wrong thinking, deserve thinking, and a couple of others. We don't need to get into all of them. These are mechanisms that pit us against each other and against ourselves. So the essential element of patriarchy is separation. That's how patriarchy functions, separating us from everything that exists. And so and making everything into a thing. So my conclusion is that we're right now using resources super inefficiently because so much goes down the drain every year and we're not actually happy. I mean, it would be one thing if we used all these resources and we were super happy. There's every reason to believe that we are far less happy than people were or are at different times who have access to fewer resources, and yet there's more relationship, more community, more variability, more capacity for self-expression, more relationship. All of these things really support people in doing well, more so than having access to more material convenience. But material convenience is super addictive.
Mm. Yes, I can relate to that. Yeah. So what did what is your vision of a post-patriarchal way of life? What in a picture for us?
The To speak of this, I want to speak of the maternal gift economy, which is
Yeah.
what existed before the rise of patriarchy, before the calamities that brought it. And the maternal gift economy emerges from this reality of all creatures in the world. We are born the most dependent for the longest time.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah.
What that means is that in order to survive to adulthood, we need to have had people who would give us unilaterally. Unilateral giving, active orientation to others' needs. That is the essence of the maternal gift economy. It's the essence of what mothering, not being a mother. It's not about being female and being a mother. It's
Yeah.
about the activity of mothering is about orienting to others' needs unilaterally without expecting anything in return, except the flow of giving and the satisfaction of caring and attending to others' needs. That's why Genevieve Vaughn, who is one of my mentors, speaks about us as a mothering species.
Yeah. So when people say capitalism is natural, socialism is not natural, whatever, but giving is natural.
Yes, socialism shares with capitalism coercion.
Mm.
Anything that, in my mind, anything that is centrally controlled, which both capitalism and socialism are, or at least socialism as it's,
As implemented. Yeah.
yeah, are not going to work because it goes against the flow of life. There's no control in nature.
There's power, but there's not control.
Exactly. And power is something we all need. If we see power as the capacity to mobilize resources to attend to needs, there's no creature that doesn't need power, from plant and microbe to human societies. Everything that lives and has needs to attend to requires mechanisms for mobilizing resources. If we don't have any, we die. So power is a fundamental, it's almost like it's the mother of all needs in some ways.
Mm.
If you don't have power, all your other needs amount to nothing. And we have created societies in which we have extremely little power, because in order to get anything, we need to already have resources that we can give the person who would give us what we want. That's the essence of exchange. Is resources flow to where there are other resources already, not to where there's need.
So it's inefficient.
Totally inefficient.
And unfair.
The word fairness is complex when we're not going to get into it. It's inefficient and it doesn't actually attend to needs. So one of the startling discoveries is that capitalism cannot attend to needs. Not because it's not implemented well, it's because it's not designed to do that. It's not designed to be responsive to needs. So the post-patriarchal way of living is also post-capitalist. It is a way of living in which resources are shared and flow to needs based on willingness and capacity and what is within purpose, which is an entirely different way of orienting. Within that vision, everything that we do is based on what are the actual needs, what are the actual impacts of what we have done so far or what we might do as we weigh decisions and flow of resources, and what are the resources that are available to attend to the needs. And then it becomes an engineering problem. How do we move the resources to the needs with the least unwanted impacts?
Yeah, I was thinking that sets up an engineering problem. I guess the thing about capitalism is theoretically it can run itself, right?
To the ground, you mean?
That's true, but it can. Yes. And a few antitrust laws here, or this or that, and it can, it can. People will keep buying and selling things for a while, on automatic. And I'm not pretending that the actual implementation of capitalism is automatic. There's lots of subsidies, there's lots of this, there's lots of that. But yeah, my mind was going to the engineering problem. Like if you're in a room with 6 people, well, there's already an engineering problem, but the communication is easy to imagine, right? Let's find out what the needs are. Let's put our heads together. Let's have a proposal. Let's implement it.
I think that the engineering problem is always there. The question of how to move resources, where they go from and to, that question is already there. Right now, we have an algorithm that says it goes to whoever can give the most money or whoever is first in line. That is our solution to the engineering problem. The engineering problem is not created through thinking about gifting. It's created by virtue of all of us being alive and and we live on a finite planet where where everything is finite. Finite doesn't mean scarce. Scarcity is a relationship with finitude. It's not finitude itself. It's a relationship of fear that there isn't going to be enough. That drives everything that we do. It's so deeply ingrained. It's like air. We don't even see the deepest assumptions of scarcity that drive all our choices. If we come from a perspective of trust in life and we look at the engineering problem, it will be different. And it's not like every time we have to start from scratch to solve it. You can do it the way we do many things. You figure out how you're going to do it for the next few months, and then you get feedback and you iterate. We do that anyway. That is actually what we do, except we funnel it in a particular way, and we can pretend to ourselves that it's not choice.
Mm,
So I'll give you an example. There in the state of Oregon, there was a ballot initiative to create socialized healthcare. Of course, it wasn't called socialized healthcare because those are words that cannot be said in the U.S.
sure.
So it was called single payer, which is the same. It just is a different name. And the people who put together the proposal worked out a lot of things, like what to do when there isn't enough for everyone, and how to assess need and all of that. And basically something along the lines of what I'm talking about. I never looked into the actual details. And it was shot down because people said that they were rationing healthcare. Now, rationing healthcare is happening now. It's not seen as rationing because it goes to those who have money. And why would somebody get particular medicine or procedure or whatever, of which there is only a finite number? Why would they get it before someone else who needs it more, just because they have money? No one can
Because that's the
convince me that
assumption.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. It's just the background assumption that makes it make sense when it really doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And the assumption is so widespread that it's invisible. Like
Yes.
when you do something within the, yeah, again, I could say a lot, but we've got other topics. Um, so you led right into my next question is which is can you share about the experiments in living the gift economy that you've been in?
Mhm. Yes. So within the community/organization that I initiated into the world, although it isn't in any way mine, there are now about 300 people involved in one form or another with this community organization. In I, I think all but Africa. We have people from everywhere, not from Africa, which is a big sorrow of mine.
Sure.
And but it is concentrated more in Europe and North America, but definitely not exclusively. And there are about 30 to 40 of us who are actively doing all the work that it takes to sustain our work, all the work that it takes to sustain our structures, to bring what we have into the world, to learn, to run everything that we do. And all the money that comes into this community organization is given as a gift. Nothing that we do is charged at all. And then 3 times a year, each of us says, what is our request? And we ask for it at 3 different levels. What is the minimum that would allow us to continue to do the work? What is the restraint that would allow us to breathe a little bit and still not at full flow of what we would ideally like? And what is the full request? And then there are a few people. We used to do it all together, and it's unmanageable because there are too many of us. There are a few people that we entrust to actually make the decision about how it gets distributed. And they interview each of us at length so that they know cellularly what is living in each of us. And then they come together and do the actual distribution. And so each of us gets a certain amount. We have never received from all the different sources less than the minimum.
Mm.
And we have never received the full amount. So it's always been um, somewhere between the minimum and a little bit over the restraint at times. At times it's gone over the restraint. And this has been going on for a few years. And people are not going away because they're not getting enough. That hasn't happened, which means that we are finding ways to sustain ourselves with less than what we ideally would want, which then turns into a fantastic benefit of an organic, life-based reason to reduce our consumption,
Mm.
not some kind of a moralistic thing. We are sharing in the risk of all of this. Whatever each of us decides influences whatever all of us have. And we all carry that care in a way that, it's not perfect. You said yourself, there is just before the interview, there isn't anything that is perfect. And still, it has been enough. And we experience enoughness without grasping for more.
Mm.
And we also are showing ourselves and whoever cares to look at it, that it is possible for that many people in many countries to distribute money based on needs and within purpose.
Amazing. And we just have a couple minutes. So my last question is going to be, how do you, how would you, do you have any tips for people who want to start, moving in that direction? Like where
Absolutely. There are a few tips. The first one is uncouple giving from receiving. Even if it's a tiny bit, give without expecting to receive anything back. All of us do it. There's a level of comfort that we can have about it. And my suggestion to people who want to liberate themselves is go a tiny bit beyond what feels comfortable. Just a tiny bit, not so much that you will re-traumatize yourself, just a tiny bit. When you get used to that and that's within capacity, extend it a little further. Then the other practice is to receive without feeling obligated to give. That's actually harder for people because of the history of debt and slavery that is somewhere within ourselves, that if you give to me and I don't give to you, then I owe you. And if I owe you, then I'm in debt. And that's a very uncomfortable position to be in. So we liberate ourselves through accepting what people give to us and releasing ourselves from having to give back. And the third thing is to deaccumulate. And what that means is to really take a look at what is it that I need? What do I really need? And it's not about trying to be an ascetic. It's just being conscious. What is it that I need? And anything that I have beyond that, finding ways to give it away as much as I know how. The liberation that we experience when doing that is enormous.
I love how clear those tips are. And just the very last thing, so I'm going to be putting up a link to the article that you wrote about vision something something in the face of collapse. Tell us the title again.
What's mine to do? Vision, action, and mourning in the face of collapse.
Thank you. And what is the name of your gifting project?
The community is called Nonviolent Global Liberation, which is nglcommunity.org. It's not my favorite website. We are working on a total revamp of the website. It's hard to find your way around, and it exists. And my writings and all the free resources and non-paywall resources also that exist there are on The Fearless Heart in one word, including the fearlessheart.org.
Great.
People can find everything I've written on there.
Thank you, Miki. This has been extraordinary.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Wonderful.